Really amazing. We are back. Um, yeah, Jason, like another webinar. Currently, we're also live on YouTube, which is also very fun, and we're going to test it out because we are using a new software program itself to optimize the quality of our webinars. And for this one, we are going to talk mostly about leaky buckets, as partially like a little bit of a sequence on the brain dump, where we had an amazing conversation about last week.
Yeah.
So Jason, like, is there anything from your end that you want to discuss? Say,
No, just welcome back. We're excited to go into this today, and I'm excited to hear more about your perspective on this and exactly what do you mean by leaky bucket?
yeah, that's the starting point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like last week we discussed just a little bit on the concept of the brain dump, and the brain dump is like the one centralized spot where you like dump all of your knowledge, your ideas, your actions, all of the stuff that you kind of want to know and keep track of. And there is then also a concept of that I call like a leaky bucket, and a leaky bucket is like sometimes the information that you actually put in there like dissipates or like gets lost in organization and stuff like that. What I noticed is that sometimes that like I want to reach out, I want to send a text, and then I am actually capturing the fact that I want to send that text, but then I'm not actually doing it, and I'm like, yes, not really removing it from my system, but it gets lost in translation and in like the organizational stuff. And like my leaky bucket was massive before I was using the second brain methodology and the AIIM concept and the PKS. And it's still there. Like I'm still experiencing a leaking bucket sometimes. I want to turn off a couple of somewhere my noise is coming in.
I can't hear anything on this side, so it's all good.
Okay, nice. Let me check. I think it's Telegram, like bling bling.
The notifications, yes.
Yeah. Discord is terrible for that as well. I don't know if you like it's all the groups WhatsApps like a notification like bling. Oh,
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, I always have to shut them all off.
Yeah. So yeah, the concept of a leaky bucket is sometimes like wanting to actually writing certain things down, like, oh, I need to remember that, but not actually having an organizational system in place for you to actually do that. So you did capture it, but you didn't actually execute it. So somewhere in between, you leaked that information or that action out of your system. And what I still notice, is the fact of I'm aware that I need to do certain things, but like I kind of pretend as if I don't know that. And I don't know if this is a universal thing, which is sometimes the starting point of procrastination. Like, you should do a certain thing, like paying a bill or making a call or sending an email or like something, but you feel like that you're not up to that. And then you're kind of pretending as if it's not there. It's like, let me just lose that email. Let me lose that note. Maybe this is something that most people don't experience, but I do experience that sometimes. Yeah, so that's a little bit the basic of the leaking bucket.
All right. Yeah, I think that's a very common thread for people, whether they're even using a brain dump, but especially if they're not even using the brain dump, there's certainly even more leaky bucket because there's more things that they've probably forgotten about or feel that they should have done that they aren't doing. That it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I remember that, but now they're on to something else, or they don't have a spot to manage it. But I'm really intrigued with your setup because you're doing the brain dump and you do have the systems to then bring it over. So where do you think or what's causing the leaky buckets in that scenario, since you do have the systems kind of in place?
Yeah. Sometimes the fact that I like capture too much,
Hmm.
like I say yes to too many things, that I don't actually have the energy and the capabilities to actually process all of that stuff. And the other one is, we touched upon that one yesterday in our like one-on-one conversation as well, like the emotional layer, like the, oh, I should be doing that, but yeah, let's not do that, because then you need to like open up or admit that you haven't done certain things just yet, or like you kind of need to lean into a conflict. And like
Mm.
me specifically, like I really don't like conflicts.
Yeah.
Like I really don't. Some people that know me would say otherwise, because sometimes I do provoke, but like I really don't like conflict.
Yeah.
So the emotional state beneath that, as in we're not just like robots, like here's a task and just like
Yep.
do the task itself. But sometimes the procrastination happens because we have an emotional response upon that. And yeah, I find that a very interesting one. And how I deal with that specifically is to make my, like those actions shorter, like
Mm.
smaller itself. So if I want to, like, sorry if you're watching, like if like I saw a WhatsApp coming in, but I didn't actually read it, I'm like swipe it away. Like then the first step, like I actually need to respond upon that WhatsApp. My first response is like swipe it away, pretend it's not there. Because I'm also like fearful, like a lot of fear is in my system. Fearful on actually opening up to face it, whatever
Mm.
she says. So that would be the first step. And then the second step would be actually answering that, or actually phoning her, or calling her. And yeah, is that the thing that I want to say? Yeah, I don't know.
Yep. So by breaking down the actions into more manageable steps, do you feel that it helps alleviate some of the emotional tie to the overall process? Is that what is giving you the ability to take action?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because in this case, like this WhatsApp coming in, um, I have an emotional response on how I think that she would react.
Mm-hmm.
And if I split it up on like first actually reading the text, then typing my answer, like as separate tasks, is make sure that I still don't have a response from her until I actually like send that. So you need to like make it smaller and smaller and smaller until the thing that would trigger your negative reaction is so close that the only last thing is like enter. And then it's like, okay, like in a moment, not looking, enter. It's okay. It's okay. Like it sounds so stupid, but it's partially admitting that sometimes stuff like this is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed, like I see massive leaking buckets with other people as well. Like I'm sending a text to someone like, "Hey, I saw you walking." Like, "Hey, what's up?" And then when people don't actually respond upon that one, is either they are ignoring me, they're ghosting me. Like ghosting is a really big problem at the moment in the world, at least I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like that I'm talking in thin air, like you're talking to no one, and like including like mails that you send out to the government or job interviews, like no one actually responds. Like you feel like you're saying stuff to no one. And that whole concept of like the leaking bucket is the illness itself, or that's I think, and it is like it's holding us back from actually being in contact with each other.
Interesting.
Because like I at least expect from an open solicitation, a job interview, for example, like apply, like at least send me the mail. Okay, sorry, this is not what we are looking for at the moment. And I'm really not flawless myself. Like I'm probably one of the bigger issues, but like I do it myself quite a lot. I miss quite a lot. But it is something to be aware about, that this is having such a negative impact upon like society. Because if we are not in communication with each other, we feel that we are lonely, and we feel that no one is listening, and that creates the feeling. So this is then the result, what people do. So they produce more, they send out more, they send memories, reminders. I got a mail, like I planned a meeting this afternoon. I've got like 4 reminders for the same freaking event. I'm like, guys, I've got it in my calendar. It's like taken care of. But almost no one actually has the stuff taken care of organizational wise. And that makes sure, like, the response upon that one, that we keep sending reminders, which is overflooding our nervous system with notifications and ideas and distractions. And because the result of like the appointment setter, like a webinar, for example, is then like, I want people in the webinar. So how do I do that? If the people are not properly like organized, send that more. And if sending more is not enough, then I need to increase my level of dopamine and level of like interest to like extract them more. Like send an email, send a WhatsApp, send like everything around you. Because then you're overflooding the whole system, that people are like, yeah, like I've seen you everywhere. Like there's no getting over it.
Yeah.
But if everyone is doing that, then we're basically just creating noise. And the true challenge is to fix that whole concept of the leaking bucket from the individual, so we don't actually need those reminders anymore.
This is a very big, very spread out issue. And you've mentioned a couple of different topics, even like the job resumes. Very much, I've got, both my sons were sending out a lot of job resumes and getting no response back. So completely understand that scenario as well. And even if they could just automate, now they're automating more and more, as your resume comes in, what they read, at least over here in the States, they automate a lot of that. So why not automate at least a message back letting you know, okay, you're not a fit for this job, or whatever would be politically correct, way for them to be able to let you know, though, that they received it and you're not not a fit, so that that you could look elsewhere. So there's that one idea of, okay, how could we put in, I don't know about safeguards, but processes to help alleviate some of that. But then on the other side here, as you're mentioning, the needs, as people are trying to remind people if they are experiencing that leaky bucket, so they send out the additional reminders. So how do you take something that's so spread across the system right now? How do you help change that, since we're just one individual?
Yeah, to really start with the individual. As in, if like I really like, well, I don't do that just yet, but the idea is to work with companies itself and to like focus on choose the 10% of employees that function the best. Like all of the managers, all of the, like actually the high level, not the high level, but the high functioning individuals. Like let's imagine that they respond to every mail, respond to every interaction, every complaint that one of their employee is doing. Then the employee level is actually like feeling as if they're being heard, because that's an emotional trigger beneath that. So like practically, it's like almost like teaching them the getting things done system from David Allen.
Mm-hmm.
As in, like, okay, if someone comes in, like, okay, great, brain dump first. From the brain dump, turn it into the action management system, and with the goal of like controlling your actions first. Every action that like comes in, then you can control that. Comparison to managing your time, because managing your time is like filling up the time in such a level. Like, yeah, I'm busy. I haven't had any time for you. Like, yeah, but that's not actually. I don't think that's actually like a reason, or at least, no. This is a symptom of a not properly working like system itself.
So with that thought in mind, if that's a symptom of a not properly working system, is it required that we respond back to everybody that does send us something?
I would say yes,
Interesting.
and um, actually saying no, I don't want this. Stop contacting me. Sometimes that's the answer as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like this is really like a learning shift for whole society, because it's very difficult to actually say that. Like, no, stop. And I personally, but I really take this up to the extreme, as in I only want to talk with individuals one on one. Like even interact with individuals one on one. Like I really love my quiet and my silence, because like the internal dialogue that I have inside of my brain is like really amazing. Like really amazing. And every interaction, like imagine that I'm just like walking on the street and I see a group of people like half drunk and half annoying, like playing music and all of that stuff. While I am there and like tuning into my internal dialogue, my plan, my vision, and all of that stuff, I'm being distracted by that group of people because they're like living their own life. It's totally fine. That's reality. But um, with that same concept, whenever you are in a group WhatsApp and an overarching promotional mail is coming in or promotional message, then you're distracting me from like being me to the whole group for like 350 people. Like, let's not actually do that. Let's have one-on-one conversations with people. Because I feel like that we like sales and marketing, especially marketing, like focusing on like a group of people as individuals or as target audience, is withholding us from being in true contact with each other. I really hope this makes sense, because this is quite a far thought.
Yeah, we're certainly touching on a lot of different aspects as we're sharing and conversing, um, and I think it's valuable touching some of these deeper, more systemic problems, whether in connection, in culture, or in humanity per se, even, and continue to look at that to challenge what is currently going on, but also challenge how to change it, how to create change in that. Well, let's go with a simple um, example here. So you mentioned looking for the one-on-one conversations,
Yes.
but let's say you reached out to somebody. Would you prefer that they get back to you if they didn't want to meet and let you know, no, I don't want to hear from you, Tim, and close the conversation there, as opposed to you having to send out reminders asking again, or having to try to contact them further.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can see
Because
that being a challenge for a lot of people to be able to lean into that.
true.
Yeah.
And that starts with like my behavior upon like what am I responsible for. Like if someone like sends mail for that back, like, hey, thank you for saying that. I'll remove you from the list. Like, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Like comparison to like, no, keep adding more information and more. Like, what do you mean? Like, no. Like I could offer you this and this would help you. And like, no. Like,
Yeah.
because we've been pushed so far beyond our limits when you're saying no and then people keep pushing, that it's very like it's a very tricky domain, but like respecting the no sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, very, very much so. Um, so let's also look at it from this angle. I'm, in my house, and all of a sudden I'm receiving, we'll say, post mail from, uh, promotional ads or whatnot. They are coming into my space, but then I have to, if I'm going to tell each one of them no, no, thank you, don't send me that, then I expending more energy having to respond to them when I never even invited them into the space than I would just tossing that into the mail or tossing that into the garbage.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Well, the problem is that in a week you'll receive another one, and in
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks another one, and in 3 weeks another one. So one would it be like the break-even point comparison to like you sending a message back to them saying like I don't want to receive that anymore, comparison to receiving that for the rest of your life once a week. And it's also like a little bit of feedback upon like I think that you are able to choose what kind of information that you're receiving in the ideal situation.
Sure.
So yeah, like signing off for things, and that also makes it easy. Like I haven't done that, so that's partially why I don't do a newsletter, because I haven't really automated the like the unsubscribe button very easily. And if I don't have that, then I don't send newsletters out, because I want to like reduce the resistance of people like signing off
Mm-hmm.
as much as I can,
Mm-hmm.
because attention is like currently we're fighting for attention, but it's partially starts for me as an individual. Like I respect someone else's attention first, and yeah, it's such a complex one that I don't really know how to manage properly just
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. You had mentioned
Um,
ideally we would be able to control the information that we receive.
yes,
Is that correct? Yeah. So is controlling the information we receive, um, currently is one way that we can do that, just throwing that, we'll say, the post mail, throwing something received via the post away. Is that one way of controlling what we receive, as opposed to going back to each one that's sending promotional material to say, no, I don't want that? Is that a way of controlling the information that we receive?
I would say no,
Okay.
because you still kind of see that. So um, the fact is that you're not being disturbed with your focus in the first hand. Because if you receive promotional stuff, even though you throw it away, then you still have that moment of like you seeing that, processing that, and then move it forward. So in the ideal situation, you kind of want to like choose, do you want to receive it in the first place?
The
And
ideal
with,
situation, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
in the ideal situation, yeah.
Yeah.
And with mail and with physical mail, it's relatively easy to kind of control that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's also like the commercials online, the radio, the television, like even the billboards in public street. Like people are just paying that with the focus on capturing my attention, so I focus upon that one. Like my focus becomes holy. and I believe that everyone's focus is becoming holy. With like you fully can choose where you want to focus on, and yeah.
So do you feel with those ads, the billboard, the online ads, that you don't get control of what you focus on? You're automatically having to focus on what they're putting in front of you?
Yeah. Um, and the strange thing as well is it creates echo chambers by itself. Because like the commercials like target on like, oh, I want to have like a man between 30 and 35 which is interested in self-development and spirituality and all of that stuff. So I'm going to give him more courses regarding that like profile. But that makes sure that you are going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into that level without you like checking for multiple other solutions.
So that sounds like it's a lot of control that you're mentioning that these the ads have over the individual, like forcing them to go down further and further into
Yeah,
whatever
subconsciously,
they are.
like a lot. Like most people don't even know how much it is. Because it even is like energetically within like the emotional scale. Like if you constantly hear people complain on the radio about a certain thing or use arguments which has an emotional reaction of fear underneath it, then your subconscious is actually triggering fear emotion. And with that fear emotion, you're going to deal with that to your family members and to your colleagues and all of that stuff.
So do you believe we've got the control over though turning on and off the radio? We've got the control over watching something online or not watching something online.
Yes.
So the same with the news. I don't know how it is over there, but the news, tends to be fear mongering generally because that's what sells. So we've got the choice not to watch the news, though. Is that it? I mean, if we've got the control there, how are we saying that they have the control? If we have the control of what we watch, what we give our attention to.
Um, I'm trying very hard to like skip the news by itself,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I still like capture it. But like this is not like um, just like a policy or like a shift, quick shift. Um, um, yeah, because it's kind of like influencing, and you'll always have that. Um, yeah, I don't know exactly how to explain that. Because yes, we are in control with turning off the devices, and like if you actually like walk into the city itself, yeah, like you're being distracted by other storylines, individuals, and stuff like that. And that's why I'm saying like in the ideal situation, I don't even want to um, interact with people that are doing something else with like their life. Their like and it really feels lonely, but it's um, if you're in a really great space for yourself alone, then other people are like a limitation or a distraction comparison to your true self. And with that whole journey of spirituality, it is like becoming conscious of your own subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
like thoughts, methods, and all of that stuff. And while you are doing that, and other people are just like present, um, then the journey isn't going as fast.
So does the choice then become not to go into the city where there are people and rather go to a monastery?
Yeah, almost. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And is that allowing space for both types of people, those that do want to interact and those that want to be alone?
yeah. And that's like currently not the case. but like I deliberately choose, like I buy for or I pay for YouTube, for example, to not have actually the ads in between. Same goes for Spotify. Like me personally, it's worth it because I can like dive into my subconscious better if I'm not like distracted
Hmm.
by the commercials. And there is a reason behind that. That's also why I feel like that I'm pretty like well in tune with myself as an individual. Um, but there are so many people who aren't in that state yet, and part of this conversation is showing those people like, okay, like be careful upon how much that you're being influenced by external forces without you even noticing it.
Hmm.
Because like I do speak with people who are like mindful, quiet. Like, what do you mean? Just like do. Like their
Yeah.
only vision is like do. Like that's the reality upon the world.
Yeah.
And that is like indoctrinated from like not deliberately, like it's not an evil device that just like, but this is how it has grown. Um,
Certainly.
yeah.
Yeah. Let me step back to I guess yeah we'll stay in that same vein. If that's the current culture and we can make choices to, like you said, pay for not having ads and go to a quiet place as opposed to a populated place, uh, is it more about just making mindful choices, or is there a push? Do you think that the culture needs to change?
Um, both. And it starts from the individual. So, like, I can only do me. Like, I can't really change the culture itself. But um, I can be the version that I want to be, like the way that I like interact with other human beings. And at the same time, um, while my influence is growing, like my impact, like I influence more people. So in that
Mm-hmm.
case, yes, I do influence the culture, but I don't want to like put the blame onto the culture and just like complain about the culture itself. That's just like me being like living the way that I envision without um without forcing myself upon them, like how they should interact. Even though sometimes I kind of do that because I feel like, guys, are you like still not seeing this? Holy smokes, guys! And that's what recently happened in the group.
Yep. So how do you balance that? Because part of this conversation is about our our self authority, if you will, our having our space. Like you had mentioned, others not interrupting our space. So
Hmm.
we've got that component, but then we've got the freedom of others to be able to make their decisions. And how do you incorporate both that freedom and then wanting to have your space, your attention as holy?
Yeah. For me personally, I really choose into like what can I do? And what can I do is to talk to an individual or to a group of people and all of those people are actually listening. So you could like of course like do a presentation to 20 people and all of those 20 people are actually listening. Then you're talking to 20 people at the same time. But when you notice that there are a couple of people who are not actually listening, then it's like, okay, so what's going on? Like, are we in this conversation or not? Because I just really, really have the tendency to only talk to, like, actually have conversations instead of talking to people. And quite often, what will happen, like, now, Jason, like, it's actually like you and me talking, even though sometimes, like, I fall back into the gap, like, oh yeah, we're live, but it's actually just like you and me talking.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a different way compared to me playing a role and then expecting, like, hey, tens of thousands of people will watch this. Like, it's a different energy.
Yeah.
and I'm losing contact with you as an individual if I play that other game.
Mhm.
And my goal is to be as close in contact with you as possible. So that kind of starts at the beginning with, like, what can we do comparison to what we can expect from other people.
Very true. Are you willing, in order to be able to reach more? So we're limited if we're all one-on-one, and if the
Yes.
desire is to reach further. So in growing that reach, communicating one-to-many seems like it's got to be a must, unless you cut the one-on-ones down to very short interactions.
Yeah, yeah, that's like, because there is so much power into it. That's the thing. Like, I will not do paid ads. None. Because paid ads is forcing myself upon the attention of other people. And what I want to live by is, if you choose to watch any of my videos, great, it's your choice. Like, no commercials in between or something like that. Well, at least not yet, but ideally never, because it doesn't match my brand. But you can watch me on your choosing. Like, you choose to focus upon my presentations or not. But if I start promoting myself on big billboards, then yes, people will see it, and yes, then they have a choice to interact with me further. So you kind of have to, in a certain way. So that's also why I mentioned, like, we just grow into that state. So that kind of makes it a tricky argument. But yeah, ideally, like, I really don't want to promote myself on television or on something like that. I really want to, let's imagine that you and I are having a really powerful conversation, and then you in a bar somewhere locally, you're like, hey, I know this guy, Tim, like, he really got great insights. Like, here's his YouTube. Go ahead. Like, that's building organically.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I don't know, does that answer your question?
I don't know if it answers the question, but it raises the question into a new area, which I think would be great to discuss as well. Because I think ideally, and we've got to make sure that we create that distinction. In the ideal way of doing it, this is the ideal, your ideal, of not interrupting another person's life by having billboards or having those ads. In the reality of playing with, okay, the way that the culture is right now, and approaching that, a question that came to me while you were talking about the ideal is putting an ad in a group where there's 300 people in the group, not an ad, sorry, not a paid ad, just an advertisement of even this conversation. So by putting that in front of those people, do you feel that that still aligns with your preferred method? Because it seems contrary to the idea of the organicness.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your take on that.
I did do it a couple of times, but ideally, I really want to stop doing it.
So how? And again, we're working with the ideal, and we're working with what is currently. So, what would better align with you in your methodology? Is it to reach out one-on-one to those 300 people and maybe send a direct message? But even then, you're still interrupting them unless they've had a one-on-one with you in the past.
True, but at least it's actually like a direct line, so I find that less invasive. Maybe that's a little bit tricky one, but, like, in the ideal situation, I just want to interact with people, to actually have contact with people. Like, I don't want to force my message upon them. Like, they can choose
Mm-hmm.
if they want to see this, yes or no. And sometimes in a group WhatsApp, I, like, have an interaction with people, like, actually, like, talking within that group, or within a group, or within a group WhatsApp. And then I just talk. Like, this is what I think about it. This, I think, would be the answer of your problem. Like, you ask me a question. Here's the answer. I hope you're doing fine. And if that person has been helped by me 2, 3, 4 times, then they could say, like, who is this Tim actually? And then they can like search Google and stuff like that without me putting the offer out there like, hey guys, I'm doing mindful productivity. Who's interested? Like, that's a way different energy game. Like, I'm here to serve people in such a way. Like, I'm here to be in contact with them. Yeah, and I'm slowly stepping out of group WhatsApps, especially those big ones.
Yeah, because I could see that being a conflict, because even having a discussion within a group of 300 people means there's 298 others that may not want that, or may not be interested in what even that discussion is. Even if it's amongst half of the group, you still have half of the group that that would violate, kind of what you're looking at for your ideal. But I still find it very difficult. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but at least if you have like a conversation with 2 people within the whole group that they can read with them, I find that a little bit of different energy comparison to like me sending out a promotional message like, hey guys, who's interested in this one?
Yeah.
And then almost no one actually responds.
Okay. Because that one is tricky. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But like, at least then people see the dialogue of other people are having a dialogue compared to me teaching stuff or saying stuff.
Yeah, because I'm quite torn on this one. Would I want to engage in somebody else's dialogue, or even focus on that? Because that seems like a draw away from what I want to focus on. But if somebody's offering a course or class or something that would be beneficial, it's like, oh, that's worth a quick look, because I can look through it, pretty quickly and say, okay, that topic interests me, that topic doesn't. Even though it's still invading my space by them, sharing it, but I would still want to be aware of that. Like, how do you get the message out without invading somebody's space? Unless it's even, because even if you reach out to everyone one-on-one, your initial reach out might be invading their space unless they've asked the question that you're responding to.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. For example, now in a group WhatsApp, where people like send in promotional messages, like I would almost say, no, like only promote it in your own distribution network and don't promote yourself in other people's distribution networks.
So who determines, and real quick, just to tie into that, who determines whose distribution network that group app is? Is it the person that founded it? Is it the group consensus? Like, how do you determine that?
The group owner, yeah, the
Owner?
person who actually founded it. Because like, if everyone is responsible, then no one's actually responsible, and that's a big problem within communities itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then they grow into the average of the whole group. And those who are highly functioning, they get kind of ostracized. Or at least like, yeah, slow down. Like, they are forced to slow down in such a way that they like get annoyed and then they just disappear. Like, I noticed that in many groups as well. I'm like, oh, guys, I'm off. Like, this is really not for me anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's actually a common pattern even throughout culture, throughout society.
Yes. And I really think that this is, like I mentioned this yesterday, I think, or at the beginning of our conversation, this is in a certain way the starting point of socialism.
Mm-hmm.
Needing to be the average and have everyone be the same. Like, get the same information, get the same things. Like, I've been very fearful upon the whole the socialism part. It's not that capitalism is by definition better. Let me say that. I think it's better, but I don't think that's the best option just yet. Yeah, but I see that happening quite a lot within communities and group WhatsApps.
Mm-hmm.
That the person who's shouting the most and promoting the most, that they actually receive the most benefit from it.
Mm.
Yeah. And we did kind of derail from the whole concept of leaking bucket, but these are kind of related, but because like this is of course like then the very, very big overarching society impact, the
Yeah.
impact on society. But this would massively solve it if, for example, if I like send a promotional message on the group, then I actually like expect from those 350 to actually have a response. No one actually does that,
Right.
but if I do that, then I kind of expect a response from those. And if I didn't have a response from those, then I would be like texting them one-on-one, like, "Hey, what did you think about my offer?" They barely saw the offer. So if they barely saw the offer, so what was that then? Like noise? Is no one actually watching the group anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're deliberately not hiding, but things are kind of becoming invisible because we use it to spam groups. And how you deal with that, as in you being very intentional, as in, hey, like I sent Jason an WhatsApp, like, Jason, you haven't responded. What's going on? Are you okay? Like sometimes that's the answer as well. And because we kind of lost that idea of like one-on-one contact, then we're not checking in with each other anymore. Like we're losing that social, like that blue zone, like actually connecting with each other.
Mm. So in a moment, I do want to go back to the leaky bucket discussion a little further, but in regards to connecting with each other, are people just connecting with those that they truly want to connect with? Do you think it's a issue of maybe just not everybody does want to connect with each other, but they're actually connecting with those that they care about? Or is it we're so overwhelmed with all the noise that we're not actually connecting with others?
I think mostly the second one, like the
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmment level. Um, and at the same time, like you have full control over who you have contact with. But sometimes we feel like that we're obligated to be available for everyone. And like imagine a lot of worker employees receive that, like their mailbox is like 80 mails per day. Like, and half of them aren't really for them, but they're still being like informed for that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the ideal situation, you're just like, no, no, no. Only disturb me when you need me and no one else. Then we'll have a conversation. Like, my attention is not to a group anymore, but it's to you as an individual, Jason. And I'm still learning to like improve upon that because I'm not I'm not there yet like
Yeah.
perfectly because
Yep.
I also live in that same culture, in that same cult. Um, but it is the cult of the West, the fighting for attention and like scream as loud as you can to actually get attention. And we as grown-ups are pretty solid with that, but like think 10 years younger, like individuals 10 years younger, or like
Mm-hmm.
teenagers or even younger, they actually like scream for more attention because that's what they see around them. Like the more that you promote, the more attention that you actually receive, even though 90% doesn't respond. And yeah, it's such a big
Now
one.
that's really interesting that you mentioned about the attention, because if let's say you are a business and you do have a service that you want to get out there, you do want people's attention. So how they're going about getting attention, their method is the only approach to getting attention then that you feel does align with the ideal is just contacting people one on one.
Yes.
Yep.
Because with one-on-one contact, you can actually like be in conversation with each other. Like, is this actually the thing that you're looking for
Mhm.
or not? Could be that you're like, no, I'm good. Ah, great. Do you might know someone? And then you go to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Without like you creating a social media following of 10,000 people with like dopamine, especially like if you're a pretty woman, it's like, oh, a lot of likes, a lot of followers, a lot of this. And while you are building your audience, you're distracting them from them being themselves.
So interesting. But are they choosing to distract themselves from being themselves, or are they being
Yes.
forced?
Well, both. I think they're like subconsciously programmed to do a certain thing like this. And like the society deemed that to be the best tactic to make sales, to put your agenda in front of others.
Mm-hmm.
But in the ideal situation, you kind of want to have the agenda speak for themselves, so people resonate with you as an individual without you forcing your agenda into them.
So if we go back to the idea of the one-on-one, so you approach somebody, you ask them, "Is this the service that does resonate with you?" Is that much different than putting an advertisement into a group app where they self-select themselves? If this does connect with them, then they could get back to you, and if it doesn't, they can choose to ignore it and just not respond.
Yeah, I would say no, as in this is not the same thing. Um, because like the one-on-one context, for one, like actually much more efficient because you actually like tune into like, is this something that you're looking for? And if it's not exactly the thing, then you can like tune it for that individual. And when you actually receive a no, so this is also like fearful of receiving a no, then you can ask that person like, oh, what that's interesting. Like what would make it what would make it a yes for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're receiving feedback directly from your client and from the person you're interacting with. If you're
Yes.
doing that in a group, like then it's only like yes or the no's,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't really give that much space to actually like improve your message.
Yeah.
A
So
little
the
bit, but
data and the
less.
right, the data and the feedback is certainly better with the one-on-one. However, from the idea of interrupting somebody else's life, is it more interruptive to their life by you doing a one-on-one as opposed to them just seeing an advertisement that they can choose to look at or ignore? Because you coming in with that one-on-one is requiring their attention back and more of their time. Is that of true service to them? Obviously, it's better for us to get the feedback. There's a lot of use to us, but is it truly serving them better than an ad would, or is it simply serving us better than an ad would?
I think it's serving the receiver better if we don't have any commercials, but we only have like one-on-one contact. Because that means that, um, like, let's imagine that we live in a world without any commercials whatsoever. And the only pieces of value that you're receiving is like people that you have around you saying like, hey, like I'm doing this thing, this really helps. Like, would you be interested in that one as well to try that out? Like, yeah, maybe. Like, let me check it out. Because then everyone's message itself is organically grown without like fighting for attention for this.
So you would only get the messages that are close to you. You wouldn't get a message that was further away. So I'm just thinking what came to me here is, let's say there's 500 corporations that are using commercials right now. So we say, okay, no more commercials. We only allow one-on-one. Do they then hire a workforce of people going out to each individual to knock on the door one-on-one? Is that actually any better than the commercials, or is that actually worse with still involving corporations and business?
In the ideal sense, um, it wouldn't be hiring employees to like knock on people's doors, but it would be like optimizing the service so good that the customers refer new customers to them.
So we'll go with that one. But then what happens if you've still got 400 customers from different businesses that have had really great service, and they're telling you, "Oh, Tim, did you hear about this? Let's say this car," and somebody else says, "Oh, Tim, this car, I've had this great experience with this car dealership," and then somebody else comes, they've had a great experience, they're still sharing it organically, but you're still getting all of that input coming to you, and now it's a one-on-one as opposed to a billboard or commercial. Is that
Yeah,
still better, or
I think so, yes. Or at least that's how I would like to prefer it. I don't know if it's better in general terms,
mm-hmm.
but at least I've got contact where people like, hey, go to that restaurant. That was a really great restaurant. Like if I know the individual and I respect the individual, I respect everyone, but if I have that person high in my value scale, then it's like, okay, if that person says that, then it's actually like a great restaurant. Then I base it on the reputation of that individual comparison to the ad of that restaurant. Because an advertisement itself is something artificial. And with a human referring me to a product or a service that they have highly funded, then it's like, okay, I trust that person that this service is actually good.
Okay. So it seems like then the determining factor isn't the amount of input that we're having, because a one-on-one from everybody would be more input than commercials in regards to time spent and our focus. But in this regard, the determining factor is the value of that, having a connection with that person
Yeah,
and having and receiving that input,
like
as
the
opposed to just
quality
cold.
itself.
Yeah.
And we do the same. We do this kind of same thing. Kind of. Oh, we're already late.
Okay.
Um, like very shortly, we already do it a little bit with like references and like
Mhm.
giving 5 stars and social interaction. Like we're kind of already doing that, but the more and more that we lean into that whole concept, um, the better it is, or I think the better it becomes. Because like no one would actually recommend you to drink a Coca-Cola. No one would actually do that. But they do have like great advertising, which feeds your subconscious of you wanting to have that.
So you don't think the taste is also, I mean, it's formulated as a bit of an addictive product. So once you have had it, wouldn't you then be more likely to say, oh, you might like this as well?
Uh, um, yeah, but being addicted is not like, oh, this is great. Like, I wouldn't actually recommend a cola for someone else.
Right. But even would you even realize that you're addictive, or is it just like, oh, this tastes great? You may not know the ingredients, you may not know the formulation of it. You're just partaking and it's like, oh my goodness, this thing tastes great. Why don't you have one? And then it seems like the information is actually what creates people deciding that cola isn't bad, like the actual makeup of it, not due to the experience of it. I feel I have not come across many people that have said, oh my goodness, Coca-Cola tastes terrible, don't have any. I hear a lot
True.
from people that say the ingredients in Coca-Cola are terrible, don't have any, not the experience of having it.
Yeah. Yeah, but like everyone knows, for example, like Coca-Cola, that it's not actually good for your health and for your like sugar input and for your like.
Everyone knows?
Uh, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
At least many. Let me say it differently. And like I never really heard someone like recommend Coca-Cola. I did hear people like recommend ice baths or cold showers or other things. And like there was not really a promotion ads on like go have cold showers. Why not?
Yeah.
There are like hot recommendations around cold showers or
Yep.
ice baths. Um, and that would be the value itself. Because like I really want you healthy and happy and all of that stuff. And if I really can make you a great um, like reference, then I would refer you to like not to actually have a drink, even though it's fun, but I wouldn't recommend it for you because
Right.
they have the best of health and all of that for you.
Yeah. Do you think this is tied into who you are around, though? Like, are you around a group of people who care about their health and therefore are recommending the ice baths? Is this, can there almost be an echo chamber in this? That if you're around people that care about their health as the primary benefit or something that they're primarily focused on, obviously they're going to recommend things around health and nutrition and vitality, whereas a group of other people may just not be focused on that, may not realize the importance of it, may not care, or yeah, they're just not focused there. They may be worried about making ends meet, and they're worried about their job and worried about finances. Some other focus where it's like, oh yeah, further down the road, maybe I'd focus elsewhere. Do you think that plays into it? Who you're around, the people that you have around you recommending things to you.
Yeah, it has an influence, but I don't think in the way that like you mean it in this
Mm-hmm.
particular difference. Because let's imagine that you are around all of the people who are just like work employees and just trying to make ends meet to actually get through the month. Like, and one of them has found a way to actually like, hey, let's like do a budget. Like, if you do a budget, then you actually like get out of this better. And then that one person like refers that information to the four other people. It's like, hey guys, this would actually help us in the state that we are in. And it's still focused on growing as like quality of life. So it doesn't need to be a bathroom, but an
Ice bath.
ice bath. Um, but it is something that like one person sees where other people, one person already has learned something, and the other people can still learn from that same information, and then that person would recommend that piece of information or that piece of service to those other individuals. Because
So
everyone is trying to do the best that they can.
yeah, yep. And with that, there's only so much energy they can put towards something. There's only so much focus. So if they are, let's say the finances are the big focus, and they're mainly, and they do come across this one that learns the budget and is helping them with that. Uh, with the rest of their life, though, are they still recommending, hey, Coca Cola? Hey, here's cereal, here's food that may not be healthy because they aren't able to focus there. It's just something that they don't see an issue with or they've had a pleasurable experience with, as opposed to now all of their recommendations being healthy. I think there's some areas where our recommendations might be towards our personal growth, towards the growth of the individual, and there's other areas that we might be completely unaware of that we would make recommendations of based on our a pleasurable experience with it, but it may not actually result in a better quality of life other than the pleasure had in the moment.
Yeah, and it's a tricky one. For example, like I spend a lot of hours in front of the computer, and it could be that someone else says like, "Hey Tim, it's not actually that good for you. Like, get out of the house like 5 hours a day, like sunlight. That would
Mm-hmm.
really benefit everything." Um, and me not knowing that, um, yeah, like I need someone around me that can like advise me on stuff like this.
Yeah.
But then like you actually have that one-on-one contact. If I actually see that as an ad somewhere online, I'm like, yeah, go outside. Yeah, I know. Never mind. Like the quality of the reference is better if you receive that one-on-one.
Sure. Sure.
And it could also be like open up the window, like eat healthy, like everything that if you and I are in contact and you're saying like, hey Tim, like I would advise you to not do this anymore because it is holding you back from actually growing or like anything like that. Like then it's your advice towards me without it making. I don't know. Does this make sense? I feel like that I
Well, it
lost.
certainly makes sense to me about the one-on-one versus the ads or something that's cold. It's like a cold email versus a warm email from a friend. The cold one, I have nothing to base it off of. It's not going to make the impact. It's not going to carry the weight as much as somebody who I know and trust and like, them sharing something with me. And I definitely can see the value in that and what you're saying around that.
Yeah. So, all in all, maybe it's time to slowly make it a circle.
Yes, yeah, we very much
We
need to.
Yeah, we kind of started with the whole concept of the brain dump and then the concept of the
Mhm.
leaking bucket. And leaking bucket is then the loss of information where you decide upon something but not actually doing the thing. And that goes the same with like me sending out information to another individual. Like I send out to one individual and I expect that from that one person in return. Like if I don't have any response back from that one person, like I actually get back to that person. Hey, what's going on? Why haven't you responded just yet? Instead of me saying that to a group of 20 people and then being okay with not actually having a response. Because then it feels like my energy is not well put. So that's kind of the whole concept of the leaking bucket. We've gone pretty far.
Yeah, I think we went very deep
Yeah.
and somewhat broad. Yeah. So I think that was very valuable and really dialing into that idea, like you mentioned, of the leaky bucket and understanding, where things are falling off that we're not implementing, not taking care of. And I think there's even further discussion to have in some of that. I love the idea that you mentioned of breaking it down into smaller steps to help with the emotions. I also think there's value in sometimes understanding the underlying emotions and leaning into that as well.
Yes.
But I think that breaking down component is actually very powerful
Yeah.
and very useful to take in, not only into consideration, but really begin to play with that in our lives. Like, it's like, how can I break this down to a smaller step to allow me even greater comfort, and not comfort, but allow me to move forward without as much resistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because I like gone through the journey myself, I kind of understand. But most of the time, I don't really realize how much fear that's behind a certain thing for other individuals.
Yeah.
And that's a very big one to take into consideration.
Huge. Yeah. And I think it's so often that they don't even realize the fear. They just know that they've got this thing that they're like, I should do this. Or I had this on even New Year's resolutions, coming up here and not too far forward. But many people have the same ones year after year after year. And there's something underneath it that is keeping them from taking that action, from making that change.
Yeah. Oh, I do have a good story about it. I don't know if you got time, but
Yes.
okay. Like there was a certain king in, I don't know, a long time ago. Like the definition of New Year's resolution for them
Mm-hmm.
was at the end of the year, or at the beginning of the year, kind of depends on the. He was like stripped away from his like king's clothes, and with the New Year's resolution, he needed to confess on all of the things that weren't king worthy itself. Like what of the things that he did in the past year that wasn't in line with the future. Comparison to like choosing what you'll do next year,
Yeah.
but it's like reflecting upon what didn't make you a saint or a king in the previous year. And that's like really shifted things for me. Like it's
Yeah. That's huge.
yeah.
That's a very big change. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of thought about that storyline while you were saying that.
Yeah. Excellent. I think that's a great analogy and a great concept.
Yeah. Great. Let's end it off with this one. Then at least I'll start the live recording and then we'll chat a little bit afterwards.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.